You count backward from 10. You get to 7. Then, nothing. Not darkness. Not sleep. A gap. 4 hours later, a nurse shakes your shoulder. Your body was cut open. You felt none of it. So where did you go? And here's the disturbing part. Did you go anywhere at all? Because here's what nobody tells you before surgery. We have been putting people under since 1846. That's the year a dentist named William Morton stood in a Boston operating room and knocked a patient out with ether in front of a crowd of doctors. It worked. Everyone cheered. And almost 200 years later, we still can't fully explain how it works. We can do it. We do it millions of times a year. But the exact reason consciousness switches off, that's still one of the great unsolved mysteries in science. Let me show you why. We think of anesthesia like a light switch. Awake, off, awake again. That's wrong, and the truth is stranger than most people realize. Start here. Anesthesia is not sleep. Anesthesiologists say, go to sleep, because it sounds kinder than I'm about to shut down your consciousness. On a brain scan, they look nothing alike. Sleep cycles every 90 minutes through light, deep, and dreaming stages. Your brain stays active, filing memories, dreaming, still able to wake up if a smoke alarm goes off. Anesthesia doesn't cycle, it flatlines the rhythm. Under propofol, the most common surgical anesthetic in the world, that milky white liquid doctors nicknamed milk of amnesia, your brain activity becomes slow, uniform, and unresponsive. Not asleep, suppressed. And that difference, asleep versus suppressed, is the whole story. Different anesthetics hit different targets. Propofol amplifies GABA, the brain's brake pedal, the signal that tells neurons to quiet down. Ketamine blocks a receptor called NMDA. Nitrous oxide, ether, sevoflurane, all different molecular keys in different locks, but they all produce the same strange end result. Your brain regions stop talking to each other. Neuroscientists call this a collapse in functional connectivity. And it's a subtle thing. The individual regions keep firing. Your visual cortex still works. Your memory centers still hum. They just can't coordinate anymore. It's an orchestra where every musician is still playing, but nobody can hear anyone else. This is where it gets interesting. Neuroscientist Giulio Tononi has a theory called integrated information theory. It proposes that consciousness isn't stored in one spot in your head. It emerges, it appears, when your brain weaves billions of separate signals into one single, unified experience. The you that is watching this. If that theory is right, and it's still hotly debated, anesthesia doesn't turn the brain off. It cuts the weaving. Think about that. Every room in the house still has power. The lights are on. But someone went through and snipped every wire between the rooms. Nothing can add up to a you anymore. So here's my honest question for you, and I want you to actually answer it in the comments before we go further. If the weaving stops, if the thing that makes you you comes apart for 4 hours, is that still you lying on the table, or is it just a body waiting? I genuinely want to know where you land on that. Tell me below. Now, the unsettling part. There's a phenomenon called anesthesia awareness. Some patients under general anesthesia don't fully go under. Older estimates suggested it could be as common as 1 or 2 in every 1,000 surgeries. Newer, more careful studies put the number of reported cases much lower, but even the low estimate means thousands of people every year. Most report only fragments, a voice, a sensation of pressure, a vague sense that something is happening. But in the worst documented cases, patients have felt the scalpel and been completely unable to move, unable to scream. Why does this happen? Because going under isn't one drug doing one thing. Modern anesthesia is a cocktail, one drug to switch off consciousness, one drug for pain, and one drug to paralyze your muscles so you stay perfectly still while the surgeon works. Now imagine the paralytic works perfectly, but the consciousness drug underperforms. You get trapped, awake, feeling everything, frozen inside a body that can't send a single signal for help. This is exactly why anesthesiologists now watch brain monitors like the BIS index, a real-time readout of your consciousness on a scale from 0 to 100. Surgery aims for 40 to 60. Below 40, you're deep. Above 60, you might be listening. If that idea alone just made your skin crawl a little, good, that means you're paying attention. Do me a favor and hit that like button because it genuinely helps this kind of video reach other curious people. Then stay with me because the next part is the one that actually breaks people. Here's the part that breaks people's brains. Under anesthesia, time doesn't slow down. It doesn't speed up. It disappears. A 4-hour surgery and a 40-minute procedure feel completely identical from the inside because there is no inside. No dream, no waiting, no sense that some time has passed. Compare that to dreamless sleep. Even on a night you don't remember dreaming, you wake up with a faint feeling that hours went by. Under anesthesia, that feeling never even forms, because your hippocampus, the little seahorse-shaped memory factory deep in your brain, has been chemically switched off. And that's not a bug, that's the point. Anesthetics are specifically designed to block memory formation, which leads to something almost merciful. Even in many cases of partial awareness, the patient remembers nothing at all afterward. A mercy, and something deeply strange to sit with. Whole hours of your life, simply deleted before they were ever recorded. But one drug breaks all of these rules: ketamine. Ketamine doesn't gently suppress the brain, it scrambles it. Patients come back describing something wild, floating outside their own bodies, watching themselves from up near the ceiling, traveling down long tunnels of light. Sound familiar? Because these are the exact same features people describe in near-death experiences. And that is not a coincidence. In 2013, researchers at the University of Michigan found something haunting. In dying rats, at the moment the heart stopped, the brain didn't just fade out. It fired off a surge of electrical activity, a burst of gamma waves, the same signature we see during vivid conscious awareness. For a few seconds, the dying brain may have been more awake than a waking one. And when Dr. Sam Parnia studied cardiac arrest survivors, people whose hearts had genuinely stopped, some of them reported clear, structured, detailed experiences that seemed to happen minutes after they should have gone dark. So here's the uncomfortable idea. Some scientists think the dying brain may release its own ketamine-like chemistry or trip the very same pathways, which raises a question you can't unask. Is a near-death experience just your brain's final dose of its own anesthetic? I have to know if this hits home for you. Have you, or someone you love, ever come out of surgery with a strange memory, a voice, a feeling, something that shouldn't have been there? Those stories are unbelievable, and I read every single one. Drop yours in the comments. Coming out of anesthesia is not a clean reboot. It's messier than that. Basic reflexes come back in minutes, but the higher stuff, clear thinking, memory, judgment, can lag for hours. That's why people say ridiculous things after surgery. Ask the same question 10 times. Cry over a juice box. Swear they can speak French. It's not a personality glitch. It's a brain switching its systems back on in a specific order on completely different timelines. For older patients, it gets more serious. Studies suggest a meaningful share of adults over 60 experience something called postoperative cognitive dysfunction, real confusion and memory problems that can linger for weeks, sometimes months, after an operation. In some cases, it never fully resolves. The aging brain simply takes longer to reweave all that lost connectivity. Which brings us to the question nobody really wants to answer. If consciousness truly depends on integration, and I have to be honest, this is still one of the great open debates in all of neuroscience, then during those 4 hours, one interpretation is genuinely unsettling. In any meaningful sense, you didn't exist. Your body was there. Your neurons were firing. But the you that's watching this right now, the one that remembers your childhood, that loves specific people, that quietly fears death, that pattern may have simply dissolved. And then a chemical wore off, and your brain reassembled it, rebuilt you from scratch. If you've made it this far, and your brain is doing that pleasant, dizzy, wait, what even am I thing, that's my favorite feeling in the world, and it's the whole reason this channel exists. If you want more questions like this one, the kind that quietly rearrange how you see your own mind, subscribe and come think with us. That's it. Now, let's finish this. So, where do you go under anesthesia? Nowhere. You don't travel. You don't sleep. You don't dream. The networks that generate your sense of self simply stop assembling, and when the drug wears off, they assemble again. Think of consciousness like a song being played by an orchestra. Anesthesia doesn't kill the musicians. It doesn't smash the instruments. It just leans in and tells them to stop listening to each other. Every instrument still works perfectly. The music just stops. And here's what I keep coming back to. Every single time you've woken up from surgery, your brain has quietly pulled off one of the most extraordinary acts in all of nature. It rebuilt you from nothing, and it did it so smoothly that you didn't feel a second of it. You counted backward from 10, you got to 7, you disappeared, and then you came back. Maybe that's the strangest part of anesthesia. Not where you go, but that something somehow brings you home.